From the haunted hills of Harrenhal, haunted halls rather, all the way to Dragonstone, where a certain dragon is having an interesting day. A fan favorite of our guest, Sea Smoke, out there having a little bit of an emotional moment. This is Casterly Talk, and we talk about Harrenhal, we talk about Sea Smoke, we could talk about a lot of people, including two new characters. Corlys up and about, no longer on a cane. We've got the meeting of the Queen Dowager and the Black Queen. It's so much is happening, and we have one of our very favorite people back on Casually Talk with us. You may know him as Ace. You may know him as Squad Leader Ace. We know him from First Cut and Geeks of Color. One of our very favorite people. Andres Cabrera is back. Hello.
What is up, man? I'm excited to break it all down. Excited to talk about all things dragons, all things House of the Dragon.
Yeah, dude. This was, I hit you up and I was like, hey, I want to start bringing people back in and have this sort of call-in style where people can stay and go. And we've been doing that a little bit. And then I saw Sea Smoke and I was like, yes, my timing is perfect. Because I thought last week, I was like, okay, we saw him. Maybe now we'll go a couple of weeks and not see him. But they want him in the mind of the viewer. They want people to remember. Get that line about Leonor and everything. So we'll talk about that. We got some people here. Jamar Jones, yes, a legend he is. What's up, Ace? Rook's Nest next week. Hello indeed. Hi. Chris is here. Justin's here. Great crowd. Tell your friends, retweet, like the video, all that stuff. We are broadcasting. Of course, this is still Ken's channel. Ken, at the time of this broadcast, a little bit of a shout out. Can't promote it anymore because it is actually happening literally right now in Burbank. Ken Knapsack's Hot Burbank Nights at Flappers with Mark Ellis, Jed Sturgers, great and more. A great night. So congrats to Ken on that. He's still the executive producer here. He left me the keys to his haunted castle. And so we're going to walk around. We're going to see what we see. Spoilers, of course, for the full episode. Spoilers. And now I will say, I clapped seeing Millie Alcock back for one little scene. I'm so happy they did that. I thought that was really, really cool. Give me your overall thoughts, and then we'll start to break it down by camp and character.
Yeah, it's a lot to take in. I feel like I say that every episode, but it really is a lot to try and digest, especially when you're just going for a loop from like what is and isn't happening. The timeline's kind of mixing up left and right, and you're trying to figure out who's who, what's what. But I really enjoyed it. I really do feel like a lot of it has to do with performances and character work, especially Rhaenyra for me, who I keep going back to Rhaenyra, who I personally feel like is really holding the show together. Like, I truly feel like without Rhaenyra, I don't think I'd be into this show. Because she is really like so much heart inside a world that is just so cruel and so ridiculous as far as how over the top these characters can be. And yet Rhaenyra just literally is the foundation that holds it together. So the fact that we got more of her internal conflicts, more of her external feelings was really, really good for me.
Yeah, and a lot of the moments of tenderness, I think the show picks them really well. It's like some people making the show, they might have just been like, okay, we need to get to the next big thing, but they stop. The director of this episode, Gita Vasant Patel, who was on season 1 and on Ahsoka over in the Star Wars world, and take that second to show her with their toys, after her kids are gone. Take that second to show her shifting in her chair, like how uncomfortable it is to have to do this leadership role, and how Rhaenys and her play off each other is fascinating, because Rhaenys has become the de facto hand of the queen, even if she doesn't have the title. She's the only one that seems capable of that. All these men bickering and just wanting, we'll Dragonfire. Clearly, we'll just Dragonfire. We'll win. It's been really interesting. Comment from Jared here. I'm worried about my bloodworm. Well, we'll talk about that. And I'm never worried about Caraxes because he low-key is the biggest psycho in the game. But I did enjoy seeing them. I did not know that GQ spoiled the Millie return. I'm very glad I did not see that because I clapped.
Yeah, me neither.
That was good stuff. Very excited about this. Very excited to talk. We have one of our returning callers, one of our best friends coming in as well. I'll add them now. That way we could just get right into it. Andy's back. Hello, Andy. Andres. I don't know if you've ever met.
We haven't,
but no. Andy, Andres, Andy. There you go. That's how easy that is.
What's up, man?
What's going on?
Andy from an Ending Pending, from Genders, Queers, Buccaneers, and of course Force Friends Rewatch, and the Cosmos and Krakoa and all those places. Yeah, absolutely. So Andy, the Unarmored. Yeah, what's going on? You feeling comfortable?
It is next to me. I didn't know I was going to be popping in tonight. I thought I was just going to be watching in the chat. But when I got the link, I quick throw on my Ren Fair shirt. I didn't make my husband get out of bed to strap me into the armor.
Sure.
I cannot put it on by myself.
Oh, that's what they don't tell you about knighthood, which we also got to see a scene of that here. The first time we've ever seen the HBO universe's Aegon the Conqueror armor.
It was pretty cool. There was a lot for book readers tonight. There was a lot of really cool stuff for book readers tonight, not least of which was getting to see a suit of Valyrian steel armor that apparently belongs to Aegon the Conqueror. That's dope.
Yeah, this was I hate to use the word lore because a certain other franchise has beaten it into the ground and bruised it a little, but yeah, I mean, getting glimpses of that, getting a little bit more into in a TV accessible way, dragon psychology. Like, they're restless, they can smell war coming, they're having Sea Smoke's emotional moment that we'll talk about, which Andy, you might have called, which is very similar to something you touched on last week of a prediction. We'll get into that. But then also this show bringing back early GOT magical ambiguity with this haunting. Like, we haven't seen stuff like that since early Danny, with the, is it happening? Is it not happening? Does it matter? Like, no, it doesn't matter really. It just matters that he's seeing it.
So trippy. I love that Harrenhal felt like a haunted castle. It felt very horror movie. It was so much fun.
Yeah. So Andres, you're back now. You were on with season 1, and you've been on throughout the history of Casterly Talk. And because the show's it's so sprawling, I just, without even planning it, have sort of fallen into this. We'll talk about the blacks, we'll talk about the greens and the people they're in, and then we'll see where it takes us, because it's easier and better than beat by beat, scene by scene. So I'll let you choose which side are we starting with tonight to discuss what happened with them.
Ooh, I say let's go with the blacks.
Indeed. And I think it's fair to say you, like everyone else that comes on, has declared, ain't no way am I going to be on the greens. Although I will say, when we get to the greens, I tweeted this: congratulations, Greens, for drafting your first cool guy to your team at all, really. So blacks. So let's start. You touched on your love for Rhaenyra and the performance from Emma Darcy. Like, every time I watch this, I'm like, they need to win an award, and it just gets greater every week. Talk to me about the decision to send the younger boys away. One to to sort of what's the word, not be fostered, but be set up with Lady Aaron. I forget what the word is. The ward or a, I guess you'd be the ward. Yeah, like Theon was the ward for Eddard and stuff. So and oh, go ahead.
The Theon situation was a hostage. They kind of fancied it up as
the title that they give.
But it was a hostage.
Yeah, the title that they give, I guess.
Yeah, Ned was fostered with John Aaron, though.
With John Aaron,
along with Robert. Yeah,
that's better. Yes, that's a better, more accurate, literal thing. So yeah, Andres, talk to me about sending the kids away and everything that you feel with how it has given Rhaena a more unique position in the war, where her job is now different than everybody else's.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that she feels like she's being cut out of Team Black or of the Blacks, and she feels like just because she doesn't have a dragon and that dragon power, that this is somehow undermining her abilities inside a war, without her realizing that this is the whole point of it's like preserving the future is the whole point of the war. So her role is so much more important than everyone else's role, because the lineage of what Rhaenyra has is crucial to the survival of the Targaryens in general and of dragons in general. So what Rhaena's role is probably the most important role that she's taking on. And I think it clicked with her at the very final moment when she saw the little dragons, and then when she saw Rhaenyra's reaction to letting her kids go, something that's such a difficult decision for her, but she knows that it's too much of a vulnerable state that she's in Dragonstone, and she has to keep safety in mind, and she has to be prudent and not just be, wanting to be a mother and wanting to spend time with your kids can cost them their lives, especially when there's people sneaking into your castle. So that's kind of the biggest one, that after this last episode, she's like, in case this ever happens again or something like it, I just want to make sure that I'm preserving my future with someone who also has the Valyrian connection and can teach heritage and can teach history to my kids. It's super important.
Yeah, it was really touching to see, sort of like you said, that moment of realization right at the end, because in the abstract, when you first get this assignment, it's like, oh, I'm being sent away. But the thing about, the sisters is that their mother's been gone a long time, and their father doesn't show affection in that way, if at all ever, especially to them. And so it's like, I think they almost forgot what a good parent looks like. Not that Rhaenyra's perfect. No one's perfect, especially in this world. But I think that it was like, oh, I'm being entrusted with something by a mom who maybe would have done what my mom would have done if this was around. Like, she also would have gotten us out of harm's way, because she was good-hearted, and like there's that calm before the storm quality to the whole episode. But it's like, baby humans and baby dragons, you all need to have a chance. And I think that was a rare big showing of compassion. Andy, how did you feel about the reorganization of the family?
I mean, yeah, I think you guys are totally right that it's the designated survivor. It's we need someone who is old enough and mature enough to carry this legacy on if the worst happens. And I think it's also a political assignment where, like, for the Song of Ice and Fire book readers, we've been waiting for the Knights of the Vale to show up for 5 books, and they haven't popped off yet. They finally showed up at the Battle of the Bastards in the show, but like in the books, they still haven't shown up yet. And with Hot D now, it's like Rhaenyra doesn't have an army, and she's sending a family member to kind of be that voice. Like she said, we need you to encourage them to get here quickly. It's not just this, oh, you're going to nanny the kids. It's also like, you need to be Rhaenyra's voice in that court and pressure their lady to send the support we need.
Yeah.
So it is a lot bigger than just, oh, here's some kids and here's some eggs, go sit tight in the Vale. It's make sure the Knights of the Vale show up.
Yeah, absolutely. It's in a time of broken promises, in a time where, from Rhaenyra's point of view, and we'll talk, and this is a good way to move into Rhaenys. From Rhaenyra's point of view, there is a strong argument to be made that a huge element of this is about broken promises. We saw that in the confrontation between Rhaenyra and Otto in season 1, where she takes his hand badge and yeets it over the bridge. Like, her whole thing was, well, they swore oaths before my father. And Otto, unfortunately, rightfully so, is like, yeah, they're stale. Like, you think everyone's going to care about that? And so we now see Rhaenyra in, oh, we will be re-upping, we will be ensuring, we will be highlighting and underlining a lot of the stuff. Because, in contrast to episode 1 with Jace and Cregan, House Stark is one of a kind in this way. And like, they are the only ones that'll be like, yeah, we said it, so we said it. That's not going to fly with everybody else. So you need a little bit of that assurance. And I think it ties in beautifully with Rhaenys' point, which is kind of the theme of the episode, whether that's with Blackwoods and is it Brackens and Blackwoods.
Fuck the Brackens.
Which Blackens and Blackwoods. And now with Greens and Blacks, what happened? Sin begets sin, begets sin, begets sin. And no one's really going to remember down the road this, just like no one remembers these 2 smaller houses where that beef started. And so you can see people are operating based on what they think the start is. That's what it is. And so, and Rhaenyra, it is, usurpers. For other people, it's my eye. For one particular person, it's my eye. For other people, it's Luke. And that'll be really interesting. So, Andres, with Rhaenys, who is a member of, I think it's fair to say, your favorite house right now, with Valaryon. And, we get a scene later. That's a great marriage scene with them. How do you feel about her role as like the only counselor pending Mysaria, because she's new, the only counselor worth their salt right now?
Yeah, I mean, it's incredibly important, right? Because it goes hand in hand with the theme of the show, and the theme of just everything that we've seen so far. Obviously, with the role of, I mean, Rhaenys knows more than anyone as far as what this world is, as far as a just insane patriarchal society where men decide, men rule, men continue things on, and she has to be there to just make sure that it is Rhaenyra in charge and not a council trying to overrun her or trying to push her out in any way. So obviously she has firsthand experience with that. So that's an incredibly important role for her. And yeah, I feel like it's important to remind the audience what this world is, where it is a very man-centered world, and that's kind of Aegon's main claim. That's his only claim, essentially, was that Rhaenyra is a woman. So it keeps going back to that, which I think is also important. And it's also cool to see Rhaenys, someone who we know is so capable of so much, be pushed in this role and be encouraged to take control of a lot of situations like this.
Yeah, because she's been the reminder, per her own history, like the original Rhaenyra in a lot of ways, except that didn't result in war because we had Jaehaerys, whose name hangs over this, both in terms of the old king and in terms of the baby, which is this is a time when the repetitive Targaryen names serve the themes, and Aegon as well. Aegon being the even bigger example. So I loved all that, and I love a lot what you're saying about how she's reminding us of the poisonous nature of the patriarchy, and how when Rhaenyra was young, she reminded her sort of her place. Like, hey, you're the princess; they're never going to respect you. And it's not that Rhaenys doesn't think that anymore, but Rhaenys, she's good at knowing what's on the line. So when she checks this entire, the entire Black Council, she's like, she's making the Jaehaerys point about wisdom, but she's also making the know your fucking role point, in the nicest possible way that she can. Andy, how do you feel about this character, who I think Eve Best is doing an amazing job with?
Yeah, I mean, she's so powerful. Every scene she's in, she's not as overstated as some of the big people who are like really chewing it up. Like Matt Smith chews it up every scene. Eve Best doesn't need to do that. She can like drop your jaw with a look.
Yeah.
And she's someone who has had to bite her tongue a lot. So she does communicate, I think, a lot with facial expressions for the character, which is awesome. And like Rhaenyra's council sucks. It's a lot of guys who don't understand dragons. They don't understand how dragons work. They've never probably seen a dragon in combat. I get the impression. I don't remember seeing any of these guys in the Stepstones. So them saying whip the dragons out, like let's do this. I mean, to some degree, they're right in that the Blacks' advantage is they have more dragons than the Greens. But it's so clear that they're speaking from naivety and ignorance, and Rhaenys is checking them like, y'all, you do not want to push Rhaenyra. Like,
yeah, she has the fire. She has the fire. I mean, this is not about necessarily Rhaenyra, but it's also about just like this family in general and the Blacks in general. This is coming from Chris Williamson. The making of, after the credits, mentioned that Rhaena is also Daemon's daughter. It has that ferocity deep down. She's feeling cast aside. And whether it's her on her mission now, or Rhaenyra trying to choose the judiciousness, trying to do all the qualities that Otto listed last week, talking about her dad, his forbearance, his dignity, like, which is just so good. I love how Visato as a ship was birthed after that episode. It's very, very funny.
I just want to say I missed Otto this episode. I know we're talking Blacks, but man, I missed him.
I did too. We'll talk about his son in a little bit, but yeah. So that balance of what's going on internally slowly coming out at the council scenes on both ends, but at the Black Council in particular, they do kind of suck. Like, these are lords that it's like, hey, I'm glad you're here. I appreciate it. You're in a high pressure scenario and your lives are on the line. But it really makes you feel the absence of Corlys, as sort of like, out of the men that have declared, Corlys and Cregan Stark, but Cregan's going to be a later player. There's nobody there that's like, hey guys, I'm back in her, so y'all need to fall in line. They think they can talk over Rhaenys, and Rhaenys reminded them very swiftly that you cannot. And then Daemon, was the X factor that his sheer intensity and insanity would keep them in line at court, and he's busy, which I guess is as good a time as any to talk about Harrenhal, which is a scene so beautifully directed. A lot of those, like, we're all the way over here in one hallway and we can see tiny Daemon going down the stairs on the other side. Andres, you like me appreciate the drama. We all three do. Everybody that comes on this does. But in terms of like this character, I know we talked about him in season 1 when you were on with me and Ken, and just like the intensity that he brings and everything. Talk to me about him being in a place that is probably as explosive and weird as he is, because it was kind of weird to see him almost in a Resident Evil situation where, like, I'm not normally afraid for this man. He's normally the thing to be afraid of, and he was checking his corners like the whole time.
I loved it. I really do feel like they captured the essence of Harrenhal and what the book describes too, as far as like everyone is always seeing Harrenhal as haunted, and let's see that in a visual medium, right? Where we see the rain, we hear I got to give a lot of credit to the audio mixing and just the audio in general. Like I could have sworn you hear screaming, cheering, then rain, and then a mixture of all of them, which I thought was really cool because it's like, is that screaming? Is that cheering? Is that rain? Like what is happening right now? And I think Daemon had that same feeling as far as like, what is this place? This place is weird and creepy, but yet it's so essential to the story, right? I mean, I love that they put a big emphasis on Harrenhal because of the size of the castle, where it's located, all this kind of stuff that we need to know as audience members for the key to the war. But just the absolute haunted, weird, eerie nature of Harrenhal was incredibly well captured. And I love how, talking about directing, how slow it was, the buildup, where it's so much of Daemon walking around and just being creeped out. And I really do feel like that's key to describe the essence of what we're going to see later on in, I mean, obviously Alice Rivers, but just the entire essence of what this place represents, I thought was really cool.
There's a comment here from Jared before we get into your thoughts, Andy, of how has no one said F it, knock it down. I will say it's an interesting observation that we even have by the time of GOT proper. But being from Connecticut, I will tell you that there are governments that are really bad about it, or good about it, depending on your point of view. I was born, I think, 2 streets over from a haunted house called the house on Lindley Street, which I think is finally gone. But for most of my life, it was there. And a guy, like, killed his whole family. And like, there were police reports that the cat talked and the refrigerator moved and like all this stuff. And it was there forever. And some people, like, superstition is powerful, especially if you have enough local governors of any level that are superstitious. And I think, look at some of these people. Like, they would be afraid of incurring the wrath if they ever knocked it down. So, yeah. So, Andy, how did you feel about all this? And then why don't you also talk to us about the expanded Strong family and the introduction of Cabaret's own Gail Rankin as Alice Rivers, who was in that viral Eddie Redmayne performance, amongst many other credits.
So I think something that's important to keep in mind is that by the time we get to a Game of Thrones, magic is gone because dragons have been gone. And dragons are tied to the magic of Planetos and the inclusion of magic, the power of magic. So the fact that there's dragons all over the place stands to reason that this is a much more magical Westeros than we saw in a Game of Thrones.
Sure.
Because that was just magic, like being reborn with, Melisandre's getting powers, the Starks are warging, that wasn't happening before Dany's dragons woke up. And so Harrenhal being this haunted ass place, and Daemon being kind of a Valaryon weeb, and like someone who really takes the lore and the magic seriously, seeing him in this haunted castle, being super paranoid, running across this creepy family, which is like out of every horror movie, you meet a creepy family who's like, oh yeah, this place is weird and haunted.
Would you like to have some peas? Like,
I love that he turns the hospitality down too, which means he can't expect to be safe. If a noble family offers you meat and salt from their table, you take it because it means they can't hurt you. And Daemon's like, nah, we're doing this sword out all night.
Because in his mind they're at war, which is
and he barricades the doors in his bedroom. Like the dude is he's coming to a dangerous place. He knows it's dangerous. He's not trusting the people he finds there. He's getting weird, creepy visions. He's tripping balls. I loved everything about this. And it's such a Daemon move to be like, no, I'm turning down your hospitality and I'm going to keep my sword out all night. Like that just informs so much about the character.
How did you feel about, I forget his first name, but Lord Strong, the Castellan of Harrenhal, who I thought his argument for to be believed about Larys was convincing. It's Daemon, so you're not going to have a reasonable conversation. But I felt at ease with those people until the evening. But
I mean, any Strongs that are still alive, I'm going to feel like I don't trust, just because why did Larys leave them alive?
Interesting. Yeah.
Like he took out the other ones, so why did he leave these ones? And like they just had that creepy horror movie vibe. There were like 3 or 4 sons that looked real similar, and they don't say shit like the whole scene. I did buy the story of like, yeah, we don't like Larys, he's a creep, and like us viewers don't like Larys, he's a creep. So I could buy that, but also like I'm glad Daemon's keeping an eye out.
Yeah, I agree. Let's talk about Alice Rivers. We're not going to do any book spoilers.
Spooky.
It's very spooky. Gail Rankin, is a performer that their stock is rising over the course of the last few years. I mentioned that they're currently in Cabaret or she just finished. They might have changed the cast, but other credits include The Greatest Showman, Perry Mason, The Climb, but now here for season 2. Alice Rivers, without spoiling anything about the future, overall reputation. If you Google the name, one of the first things you see is like she was suspected to be a witch by several characters. And so it's like, oh boy, like we're in. I think if you were missing that element from GOT, welcome back. Welcome back, Suspicious Magic. Andres, how'd you feel about it? And has a goth queen ever visited you in the middle of the night? Go.
No. That'd be crazy. I loved it. I absolutely loved it because I was really, if I'm being honest, I don't feel like I'm the only one. I'm been worried about Daemon these past couple episodes because I kind of feel like they're making him very, like they're really trying to hammer in the Daemon one lane kind of way, and I kind of like this being a potential possibility for Daemon to have a little bit more exploration inside who he is as a character. Obviously, we had a lot of that in season 1, but I just feel like these last 2 episodes have been like, this is Daemon. He's crazy. He's doing his own thing.
He's a problem.
Yeah. And I feel like
his dream now, is like very much like the guilt.
Yeah, and I love the idea of seeing that in a visual medium with like a dream sequence or a vision, because it's able to, again, go back to Alice Rivers, go back to Harrenhal, the location of where he's at, but also explore a little bit of what's going on internally and seeing what his view of the world is and what his perspective is. And the idea of him feeling guilt for what he did, I found to be absolutely fascinating. But again, the eeriness, this dream sequence, the magic of it all, I was giddy in that scene. That might have been my favorite scene of the whole episode.
Yeah, it was really uncomfortable. The visual, again, we talked about Millie Alcock, I think.
Yeah.
It being her specifically, I when season 1 ended, I hoped that they would get Millie and Emily to come back, maybe for flashbacks for the in between years, the missing 10 years, or anything they wanted to do, any creative thing they could come up with. This is brilliant because of their fight. Because she says, and when I was a child, I took it as a challenge. So you have this young Rhaenyra who idolized Daemon as idolized / swooned / lionized, as this strong arm of her dad. Now sees him for what he is, and he has to look at her, and he has to look at little Jacaerys. It's a really uncomfortable visual, intentionally. So obviously, it was bad enough to see baby Jacaerys. Now to see the stitching and everything is really, really intentionally gross. It's one of the you twitch a little. But to speak to his humanity, you need those moments every once in a while. And to your point, I'm glad that they brought one in now on the 3rd episode, because Daemon is not without feeling. He's not a Laris. He's not somebody that is sociopathic. He's just extremely damaged, as he talks about in the previous. He wrongly assumes that Viserys was afraid of him, and it's Rhaenyra that says, no, he couldn't trust you. And I think that has rattled his worldview, and it's not like he can dig up his brother and talk about it. So now he's walking around a haunted house thinking about it. And it's what are you going to do now? It's really complex, and I'm excited to see how it goes, especially in terms of the growing war effort and how people keep pointing out, well, it would be nice if we knew what he was doing. We kind of need him. But he's not the only, legend on their team. If you guys want to talk a little bit about, go back to Valaryon, let's talk about 2 Valaryons in particular. Let's talk about Corlys, and let's talk about Seasmoke, who is a Valaryon. Andres, lead us off with this, and let's talk about, I'll set this up by saying last week, Andy predicted and put forth this idea of maybe through some sort of subtle storytelling, subtle look, a Rhaenyra scene, a Seasmoke scene, that somehow we could convey that something sad has happened and maybe he is now available for a new bond. It seems like Seasmoke's having a moment, the cries, the diving toward the water, all this stuff. I'll start with, for both of you, Andres will go, and then Andy, you go. Is Laenor gone? Did Laenor have a misadventure and get killed at sea or something like that?
I'd be so fascinated. That's such an interesting theory. Yeah, because I guess my first assumption was that he's just where is he? He's just where is Laenor? Yeah. I'm going crazy here. But then realizing that, maybe he's in mourning. That would be fascinating. That's such a good theory.
It seems like Rhaenyra registers suspicion.
She does, but I took it as she doesn't know I sent him away. I didn't take it as is he dead? But yeah, I hope
years
so.
Have passed. Years have passed since Laenor left.
Yeah.
Which is hard to remember because some actors changed and some didn't. So keeping track of
this is
when those time jumps happened.
Yeah. The eye incident.
Because
Rhaenyra's
had multiple kids with Daemon now.
Yes, that's true. Has been a long time. And so, maybe it is the Seasmoke is why is Seasmoke acting irregular? Because before, Seasmoke at least felt something. And now maybe Seasmoke feels nothing. So, we don't have the holes here, but obviously the last episode gave us the Seasmoke and Adam tease.
Yeah.
And now we're putting him more into the mind of the viewer. I think that was my late husband's dragon is a good line. That way you don't need to go recap. It's a good line for TV. Let's talk about Corlys. So Andy, you start, then we'll go back to Andres. Corlys is now healed, no longer on a cane, no longer bedridden. It's been a long journey back for the Sea Snake. This is, like we touched on, one of Rhaenyra's strongest allies. This is a key player. Obviously, like he says to his wife, got stuff to work on. But his point of view, to me, feels, and I'm sure his world will get rocked a little bit. And again, we're not going to spoil book stuff. The three of us have some knowledge about what's going to go on. We're not going to talk about it. Just in terms of this, Corlys feels to me a little bit too focused on the Driftmark succession, when I think Rhaenys is trying to shake him into realizing, dude, we're in unprecedented times. Do whatever. Do something. We're fighting for the Black Queen. You can pick a girl if you want.
Yeah, I almost think he's too focused on getting in the field. And for someone who has done a lot of campaigns, he's been on these epic legendary voyages. He wants to be on the deck of a ship leading the war effort. He wants to be a general in the field, and I think he's going to have to take a step back and recognize that he needs to be around that table.
Yeah.
And he might have to hang back, and Rhaenys might have to be the one on the dragon in the field. And I don't know if he's going to be comfortable stomaching that.
Yeah, because he got to go to the Stepstones. You know, he got to be there for all these things. And it's not in his nature to be a commander in that sense.
Yeah,
strategy only.
And so I think to some degree Rhaenys was saying, like, you need to make a decision with an heir, and he's just like, I just want to finish my boat, and like I want to get into the battle. It's lucky I'm a good sailor, like I'm gonna be fine. And it's like, I don't know, man. I think maybe you stay on shore and let the young men and your badass wife on her dragon go lead the war effort. We need you with the chuckleheads around that table rallying the politicians.
Yeah, Andres, what do you think about Corlys?
Yeah, that's how I took it too. I feel like he's very much eager to just get in a ship and just go crazy, because that's where he's most comfortable, and that's where he realizes that that's his area of expertise, just being in the sea and being in battle. I think he feels like he's just so much more ahead of the game. I see Jared in the chat saying it might be ego. I feel like part of it is ego. I feel like he knows, like, who's gonna beat me in the sea. Like, you know who I am. Like, let me just get on the ship, just wreck stuff up, and I don't think anyone can come at me when I'm in my area of expertise. Like, who do they have? They don't have anyone. They can't keep up with what I got. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. If that,
he's like, I'm Corlys.
Are they like one of the only great houses that hasn't been mentioned or seen since the pilot? Because I know they swear.
I feel like they got a throwaway line in the first episode of the season.
Yeah.
Someone was like, we should try and get the Greyjoys because their navy is the only one that can match the Velaryons. And it's like, can it though?
Yeah, maybe not now. Yeah, and about the sea stuff, that's also his hyperfixation with the kids. He's like, oh, these are all land kids. They're not sea kids. Like, he's like, Joffrey, he knows nothing of the sea. Baela, Rhaena, they know nothing of the sea either. And it's like, big picture tying in with Rhaenyra's choices for the kids being fostered. It's like, it's not gonna matter what they know if they're dead, Corlys. And it's like, well, we can touch on this later in terms of culture and everything, because it matters. Like, along with Daemon, it was Corlys and Vaemond that were like, and of course Viserys, of like, we care about this relationship between the dragons and the ocean. We care about being the last blood of Valyria. We care about what we brought to Westeros. And so I understand his point of view, but I think, he's going to have to become the big picture Corlys in a way that he hasn't really been since the end of season 1. When he did show up to the Black Council that one time. It's going to be really interesting to see where he goes. Because in terms of that point about ego that was brought up, it's like, it is already been the death of some people, and it continues to be. And we'll talk about ego a little bit in hubris. We're bouncing blacks. Now we're going to go to greens because it's a both scene. We're going to save the confrontation between the queen and the queen dowager for the end. But let's go over to greens. Unless anybody has any more Team Black thoughts. I feel pretty good about where we are. Jace is sort of just like, Jace is a big observer in this episode.
He's got to step it up.
Yeah, he feels rattled to me. Like he's gonna have to get the kill the boys talk, that Jon gets. It's gonna happen, and it's not gonna be great. But yeah, anyone else? I guess Mysaria. We should talk about Mysaria as a newly minted member of Team Black, negotiating for a place at court. Let's talk about that. Andres, jump in. It's been a moment. We'll talk about Larys on the other side, but it's been a moment for whispers this episode, where both sides have officially minted you know, a real player on both ends here.
Yeah, I love it. I love Mysaria. I really do. And I know she was a controversial character last season, but I think she's great. And I love her reaction to Rhaenyra being like, "Can you get me to Alicent? You mean kidnap her?" And she's like, "No, just get me to talk to her. Talk and then kill her, right?" Like she keeps coming back to it, which I thought was really great. But the fact that, like you said, the ability to access certain information, access certain areas that no one on Rhaenyra's council can currently do is really fascinating. And the fact that she is extremely resourceful and has a ton of connections just with her years and years of work in King's Landing, I found to be really fascinating. I was actually kind of bummed that she didn't pull like showing up to the council meeting late last second. I think that would have been cool because it's supposed to really show you the outside thinking of a woman versus the let's get a dragon and blow shit up of a man. And I really do feel like that's kind of part of what the episode was getting at too, to show you what the White Worm can do.
Yeah, and the quality of mercy, where it's like, yes, Rhaenyra has the wrath. You know, she has the side that made her connect with Daemon. It'll always be there. That blood of the dragon. But you know, in the merciful context of just these two women, Mysaria is not used to that. It's not the normal way. Like, yeah, she was able to treat with Otto, you know, last season, but then as she points out, look what happens. Look at how the High Towers treated me and everything. So, and how they treated my people, how they treat small folk. Andy, talk to me about that. We have a couple looks at the small folk here, but them also being highlighted as much like Varys will do 300 years later. She's like, I'm not picking because of loyalty. I'm picking because of, you know, top to bottom treatment.
Well, she's a lot like Varys in that they're two started from the bottom characters in like the most literal way, and now they are at the table. And I think Mysaria highlights that if Otto saw her as a real person, he could have removed such a key piece that Rhaenyra is going to need in her campaign now. And Rhaenyra seeing her as a real person and saying like, oh no, I recognize your skills and your worth and your value. I don't care that you were born a peasant. I'm going to make you my master of whispers. Sets her apart from the Greens in a way that the Greens don't do that sort of thing. No. I mean, like Aegon just made all of his buddies the freaking
they're all new Kingsguard.
The Kingsguard, like, which is the most honored position a knight can have, and Aegon's like, no, let me give it to my drinking buddies. Like, it's it really highlights how they're operating and who they see as valuable. And I'm very interested to see more of Mysaria and the study of what can the small folk do when kings and queens are at war with each other.
Yeah, and they make it a point to zoom out from the Greens to show us that Cheese still hangs there with a crow eating his eye. Like, they are still like that is still the monument to the way Aegon operates. Even though they did, like, even as he admits to his grandpa, yeah, I killed all these innocent ones, but I got one guilty one. You know, one of them in there.
Probably.
Yeah, you hope. We know. But yeah, so let's move into the Greens and talk about where their team is at. We talk about now, as Big G in the comments says, his frat bros. Yeah, we got frat bros in the Kingsguard openly admitting that they don't keep their vows and the king doesn't care. He pretends to care, but then he goes out with them anyway. We have Kristen Cole with a haircut, just showing up late to work. He already just like a lower tier hand. Just awful. We'll talk about him. We'll talk about Alicent, of course, later. But let's start with Larys. We've already talked about how strong Larys is now official, whereas before he had just sort of been this creep, showing up either to Alicent or to whisper in Aegon's ear. Andres, how unsettling is it to know that one of the key disturbing characters and one of the earliest offenders. Like, this guy has been an issue for a long time and many years in world, is now has the impunity of being a small council member.
Yeah, it's absolutely fascinating. I really did find the scene to have a mix of a lot of emotions, right? It's fascinating what they're doing with Aegon so far, because I really do feel like we've seen it these past 2 episodes as well. The first episode with him kind of being like, yeah, why can't we help these people? And then the second episode, obviously, the morning of his son. But it's this idea of him playing to Aegon's ego and really trying to do actually kind of the right thing, because they already decided that you can't just take Sunfire to battle. That's a ridiculous thing to do. And he has to make sure he gets Aegon to make the decision on his own, but influence that in a way that he can, where he can just make up like, oh, they're saying rumors of, they're taking over, and you're going to be gone. So maybe they do take over. So the way he's able to do that, I found to be super efficient and fascinating, but also the way that Aegon responds to it. And he feels like he got that ego boost. So he immediately gives the guy a promotion, which is kind of what he did with Kristen Cole too, where he feels like, all right, you told me that, I'm gonna pay you back with a Master of Whispers title and a seat at the council as well. So again, the way this guy is able to crawl up and just really play the game pretty efficiently so far. Obviously, not everything has been correct, but definitely his own game is going pretty well.
Yeah, because even though his actions at times have been, to say the very least, drastic, burning his family in Harrenhal, taking out all these tongues, going after the rat catchers, like, he's doing explosive, violent things, but he's so good at the game that there's never discussions going on about, hey, maybe we can't trust Larys. No one's saying that. He is doing it, and people are none the wiser. Because, yeah, we have great players of the game, like, to mention him already, like Varys, like Peter Baelish, but everyone knew Varys and Peter Baelish were scum. People have yet to realize that about Larys. They don't like him because of his physical differences. They don't dislike him because of things that he's doing yet. Andy, how do you feel about this?
I want to highlight Jared's question in the chat. What is his end game? But I read the book and I don't know what his end game is. Like, I know what happens and I could not tell you what his end game is. Larys is a freaking mystery.
As it stands in the show, it almost feels like he's I'm comfortable being a High Lord and I want favors, be they fetish based or otherwise. Like, they might just define this different. They might give him an end game. Who knows? Yeah.
Yeah, he's a mysterious character. The actor is doing an incredible job. He just talks like a pervert. Like everything he says, I'm just like, oh, I don't know why you're saying this. You're up to something. I don't trust him. I think he's going to bring out Aegon's worst impulses, even if for this move he got Aegon to do something cautious. I think he's going to bring out the worst in Aegon. Because we've seen him bring out the worst in Alicent time and time again by manipulating her. So,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Jared says is a Joker, agent of chaos. It might be. I could see them playing that in a certain way. I don't think he'll have a similar like ideology to Dark Knight Joker, but you could do something interesting with, because you all treated me differently. Like, it's vengeance. Like this could be Tyrion if Tyrion was a villain through and through. Because of the abuses, like I'm in it for pain. I could see that. But he has too many political opinions for it to be that simple.
If I had to money down guess, I would say that he has a warped idea of caring / possession for Alicent, and therefore views Aegon as an extension of that. That would if I had to guess, that would be it. But
I could see it.
It's really hard to say, and book knowledge doesn't help. The historians disagree on that guy.
Yeah. So let's move into who I referred to earlier as the first cool guy drafted to Greens, and I said this on Twitter. Some people might jump in and be like, "Oh, Alden Aemond." No. I said cool guy. Aemond Aemond is cosplaying a different cool guy, and he's a badass, no doubt. He can back it up. He's one of the best swordsmen of his era, and he will later on, quite literally, big dick his brother and the King's Guard, and like flex and walk away in his birthday suit. Like, there are cool things that Aemond does, but I mean a cool guy. I mean like oh yeah, I'm here. Like, hello. Like, we're going to the inn. I'm a knight. Oh, like, I'm gonna shit on Kristen Cole. Like, hello, sister. Like, Gwaine Hightower, played by Freddie Fox. I'm glad that this show came down firmly on how to say Gwaine, because Arthurian adaptations of like the Green Knight cannot agree. If you go to the Green Knight with Dev Patel, different characters say it differently. King Arthur's like Garwin, Sir Garwin. No one knows how to say this name, but in Westeros, it is Gwaine. I loved this introduction because, as Ken has talked about a lot, because of the nature of the story, decidedly less humor and joy. And I think making Otto's son extremely different from Otto was a very clever way to bring it in. Whoever wants to jump in.
I'll say it. He's a rock star.
Yeah.
I also love that Gwaine wears green because of the high towers. That's a nice little, I'm sure, intentional choice by George and the show. I want to see more of him. I love that he's giving Kristen a hard time. He feels like kind of a very classic, heroic fantasy knight, which I love when those shows show up in A Song of Ice and Fire. It tends not to end great for them, but when they're a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. How did you feel, Andres, about this character who it's like, he's not on our team. He's not on our team, but I like the cut of his jib.
Yeah, it's definitely it was cool. It was cool to see for sure. And I definitely felt like the scene after, when they're in the field and heading towards the end, the idea of him already kind of like taking other knights, like they're kind of on his side, and they're like, yo, I'm kind of vibing with this guy more than Kristen Cole, and they're kind of undercutting Kristen Cole in that authority role because he was chasing after them pretty intensely. So the fact that he's already like gathering other knights to kind of disobey and to do his own thing, I thought was really cool. But obviously the interactions between him and Kristen are going to be fascinating. I'm definitely curious to see how they play up that relationship or that conflict that they're going to have between each other, or if they're not going to have.
Yeah, because it's almost like one of the great tragedies of Kristen Cole, functionally speaking, because he's so easy to hate, and he's many people, including myself, most hated character in the show. Even Fabian Frankel's amazing, of course, so it has nothing to do with him. And also, stop being fucking weirdos online. I saw that he had to turn off his comments on one of his posts. Like, not that we need to say this here, but like, we don't do that. And if you're watching this, please don't do that. But it's interesting because it's like, you go back to early GOT, right? What was one of the earliest things that Jaime and Cersei wanted, really before the story even got going? They thought maybe Jaime could replace Jon Arryn. Like, that was one of their earliest thoughts. And, a Kingsguard stepping up to hand does happen here. We get to see what that would be like. And whereas back in that context, it's like Jaime stepping up to hand that early might have been like this devastating iron fist, like this incredible thing. What we've seen here is that promotions, when you're Kristen Cole, actually make you less respected. Like, the knights are seeing him walk by and they're like, get a load of this guy with his armor highlights, like showing up late. The council doesn't respect him. Alicent stepping all over him.
Kingsguard lounging on the steps.
Yes, they're lounging, and like Gwaine showing up and just being like, I know you fired my dad, but you didn't fire me, bitch. Like, and just people do not care. They don't care. Only the people that are like literally have to care. But like, there is the respect for the hand is at an all-time low. And I think that is fascinating.
We have seen a lot in this country. People get high-level political positions that are not qualified and are kind of a disastrous choice. And boy, howdy, is it a lot easier to watch that happen in fantasy world.
Yeah, it really is. those questions of like, what if they just appointed, you know, whoever to whatever. We got a little bit of a taste. We have a little bit of a taste of that here. And we've seen how unstable Kristen is, and like mythically, symbolically, you know, as all three of us being big Star Wars fans, we know how significant the hair change is. And for him to do it and come out with this almost Roman-esque, like, take myself too seriously change. Andres, I know you have to dip in a few minutes, so give me your Kristen thoughts, and then we'll hit anything last that you want to hit.
Yeah, no, I actually felt like it was more like a monk. That's what it looked like to me.
I like
Almost
that.
tapping into that, like, I'm a religious, like, I know what I'm pure. I got my head on straight. We're gonna keep things orderly. We're gonna do things right. Like, that's how I took the haircut, as more like it looked kind of monkish to me. And immediately tapping into, you know, this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna do it how I'm gonna say it. And we're going to keep everything in order. Like, him trying in his own way was super fascinating to me.
Yeah, I think that was interesting.
I dig that, yeah.
Yeah, I think that like the projection of purity that happened last episode with the white cloaks, and the projection of purity that happens in terms of really anything. You know, season one of my favorite moments is like, he's throwing around calling women the C word, and then he's like, all women are in the image of the mother. It's like, okay, buddy, all right. I get it. We get it.
Jared is calling him a paladin in the chat, and I was about to say Oathbreaker, and he just said the same thing.
He is an Oathbreaker paladin, but like, yeah, I should do a Kristen Cole Baldur's Gate 3 run and just watch as my party members leave. Watch as they all get tired of me for being a hypocrite. Andres, any thoughts you want to throw in about greens before we keep going? And obviously you'll be back as the season keeps going.
Yeah. I wanted to get into Aemond a little bit, just because I do feel like a lot of what the greens represent to me is this, it's almost this not pity, but like, they had an upbringing, or certain characters. We talked about Laris Clubfoot, and the discrimination he felt, and also Aemond, the discrimination and the bullying he received as a child, now being used to lash out in the way he did, obviously with Vhagar in the finale of season 1, and Aegon in his own way, obviously with last episode, where he saw like he still feels like a rejection of his father, where he doesn't even feel like, I mean, Otto implies that he wasn't even considered to be the heir, and he always preferred Rhaenyra over him in any way, in any capacity. So I feel like a lot of the greens, they're really tapping into the shame aspect, the lashing out aspect of a childhood, or of a disability, or even in this episode with Kristen Cole, of you know, tough upbringings, where he says, "Oh, you have such upbringings," and you know, of all places, like a
race,
poverty aspect,
like
race.
Oh, see a Dornishman, or like whatever he says, the Dorn gets checked twice, you know, at the high level and in Flea Bottom, of like that sentiment still lingers, like this bastard pretender whose name I don't think we get. He's down there like, Dorn, one of the only place that didn't bow to my family. It's like, okay. You know, so all of those things, I love that you tied that in, like religious guilt, masculinity, physical disabilities, race, class. Like, the greens are like, we've been hurt, and so we're gonna hurt. You know, that's their whole thesis.
Yeah, and it really feels like it makes you, obviously you don't root for them in any way. I still don't. But at the same time, you see where this kind of stuff can come from, and it's so real to our real world, obviously, where a lot of people do feel lonely, and do feel a lot, especially a lot of men feel lonely and feel rejected and feel all this kind of stuff, and all these emotions that are difficult to handle and take in. And instead of healing from that and processing that and finding a community, they lash out, and they find rage, and they tap into the most dark aspects of humanity. So I definitely feel like that was all said in this season. Just to clarify, by the way, it was Andy in the chat. Yeah, it was Andy in the chat, not me saying that I was gonna Yeah, just I wanted to clarify
Oh,
that.
oh, it was?
Yeah.
I was like,
read?
oh, Andreas
Can
and
I
I are both
read?
leaving at the same time.
Oh, you know what it was? It's
I mean,
probably
we can.
no. Anyone can leave or stay. It's probably I saw AND and was like, I know what that says.
I
And
wanted
then-
to clarify because I was like,
Yeah.
did he mix us up? Yeah.
I did. Well, Andy, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
I just used
And I
your
just took
5
all your
minutes
time too.
on Andres. But please, if there's
I'll take
anything
another
you
5.
you could take whatever you want. Go right ahead.
I just really want to highlight the Blackwoods and Brackens again. I think with the Eric and Eric last episode and then the Blackwoods and Brackens this episode, I think they were really the thesis of what this first half of the season is setting up, where like this war is not going to end well and it's going to be a disaster for everyone. Humorously, I want to bring up Muppet Watch. We got our first Muppet of the show. We got 2 Grover mentions. That means his sons, Kermit and Oscar, are not far behind. And Grover's grandson, Elmo Tully, is going to be coming for the Hour of the Wolf. I'm staking my money on it. Those are canonically the Tully dames in the Dance of the Dragon. So I'm very excited that we got Grover. I was worried that the show would not mention him.
Yeah. I also love the subtle little Daemon character beat where they're like, well, he can't speak and he has all these health problems and he can't do anything. And you can tell for a second that he thinks of Viserys. And
yeah,
and it's like that. Ooh, like he's so like the fact that he couldn't actually look at his brother and was always kind of standing looking this way.
Yeah.
And the only time he ever stepped up, obviously, was to give his brother his crown. Like that all comes back. Annie, thank you again so much for calling in. Always welcome. We'll do this again, I'm sure, as things get more violent and insane.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I love your chat and everyone in the chat. Thanks for hanging out and talking.
Yeah.
And I'm very excited for more Hot D. I think that this season is off to a hell of a start. So hopefully I'll be able to join y'all again.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll talk to you soon. Bye,
See you guys.
See you, Andy. Nice meeting you.
So yeah, lots going on with that. Moving through greens, we touched on Aemond. I think, Aegon, obviously incapable of making a good choice. He tries to be king for a second. He's like, remember your vows, your chastity. And then they go out anyway. They're trying to party. They go and they're at this brothel where you can see the small folk starting to have their own opinions, starting to take sides, people using usurper, people using pretender, people throwing out a lot of the terms. I just wanted to highlight real quick that one of my favorite cast members from Samson Kayo, who played Alu in Our Flag Means Death, is at that table and he's talking. And we get this scene and it ends with the humiliation of Aemond. And he doesn't break. He doesn't give into anger. Instead, he chooses it as a moment to really try to be Daemon-esque and be like, I'm not bothered. I'm standing here full frontal. I'm naked. I'm going to walk out of here proud. And I'm even going to say, let the squire have sex with it. Like, he's not going to give in like his brother would. And it kind of ties in well with their small council scene of where he's like, yeah, brother, we need you here. Like, blah, blah. Like, he's constantly trying to out-king his brother. Even if it pains him, even if he's in immense pain.
See, I'm reading the same thing you're reading, Alden, but I'm curious if other audience members and if the show itself, I don't know if the show itself yet is hitting this, but do you think that maybe people are rating Aemond as like, damn, he might even be better than Daemon? Or do you feel like they're getting because I'm getting what you're getting. I'm getting he's cosplaying, he's pretending to be.
I think,
and he's really not. Like, he's just.
I think the show does a good job of writing the line, because like they always make the point that he's the baddest dragon rider, because he is. Because having Vhagar makes you the baddest dragon rider, like by default he is. But I like that like this ties into like last week when he's like in fetal position with this same sex worker that he's known for years, and all he's talking about is Daemon. My uncle's afraid of me, blah, blah, blah. Like, he's so in the head that I do think the show knows. We all know that there is a confrontation later. Not going to talk about it. And I think that's going to be cinema, to say the least. But yeah, I think it's interesting because we see how unstable Aegon is. Like, he can't even walk into this place acting like a king. He walks in acting like a king, and then in 2 seconds is buying everybody drinks. Aemond, he can have, I think it's a cool parallel, like inverse parallel, that like Aegon can have the literal conqueror's armor and not be taken seriously, but Aemond can be butt ass naked and taken seriously.
Yeah, and I feel like I feel like the book makes it clear that like he was never his uncle as much as he always wanted to be.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the purpose of an Aemon, is like this guy who really tries to put on this, like, I'm a badass, like I'm the badass, I'm Mr. Badass. Like he really tries to do that. And yet in reality, that's not what he is, no matter how hard he tries. And yet they're adding a lot of emotion to him and empathy that you want to empathize with him because of, even last episode, like you said, when he's talking about Daemon, he says, well, I was bullied as a child. They bullied me. I didn't mean to kill him, but if he did die, I mean, he bullied me and he took my eye. Like he's almost kind of like throwing that in there to remind you that, like, I mean, he took my eye. Like that's kind of his justification. Like, even if I didn't want it to happen and I feel bad about it. So it's super interesting the way they're using this character and really trying to show you a different side, obviously, to the Greens, but also his own justifications as far as what he's doing and why he's lashing out, or why he lashed out, and why he's acting like he is.
Yeah, he's trying to have a self-awareness that the rest of them don't have. He can't put that into action, and that's a sin that he gets from his mom. Like he really, like, they can receive information, they can process the information, as we'll talk about with Alicent, but when it comes for choices, they can't bring themselves to do it. They can't, like, after killing Luke, if the remorse was real, it's like, you would have maybe decided, I'm gonna choose peace, but like he can't. He's resigned himself to it. Only Helena, which I loved her little scene of like, I forgive you, and it's like, it's, you don't need to say for what, because we can insert so much. Literally speaking, it's probably, I forgive you for having the Lord Commander of the Kingsguard in your bed while this was happening. But we know that for Alicent, it's everything. It's everything she wanted to tell her father when he was like, I don't wish to hear it. I
mean, just being a mother. That's
Yeah.
a lot of it is what it was for me personally. That's how I took it. Is like, a lot. I forgive you for almost like not being there, not just in general, just not being my mother when you should have been, in situations that I was placed in and I was forced to be in. You knowing what it's like, and yet you still let me experience that by myself.
You didn't make a change.
Yeah, and she's able to move on from that personally. You believe her, or at least I believe her, when she says, I forgive you. And that relief that Alicent feels for that brief second before we cut, it shows that she accepted it and she really took that in. Like, oh, damn, she does forgive me. I needed that. Like, I really needed that.
Absolutely. I thought it was powerful. I thought it was a really beautiful scene. And Helena continues to be like, it's easy to say she's a green, but she's really, she's probably the only victim in the family at this point. The only, like, no blood on her hands, true innocent left. And of course her daughter. And yeah, for her to sort of serve as like, she's kind of like Alicent's heart walking around outside of Alicent's body. Like, Alicent's kids all inherit a part of her, and Aemond is the, I'm gonna try to tough my way through the pain. Helena is sort of her emotional, heart-based side, and then Aegon is the machinations. Aegon is the manifestation of her bad choices, in a lot of ways. And I it's a great way to segue into the final conversation. I think lots of great tension. Rhaenyra pulling a classic Star Wars of, I'll just wear whatever they're wearing and and get in, which I thought was a good touch. And she makes it into this scene, smartly played in terms of like the actual writing and blocking of like, if you're writing and directing this episode, you have to make the audience believe that Alicent wouldn't just scream. So it's like, yeah, pull a knife on her. Like, pull a knife on you. Yes, they'll kill me, but you'll die. So like, let's just please talk about it. And I love that it is definitive now, based on last episode and based on this, that Alicent and Otto know they twisted the information. And now on top of that, Alicent knows, oh, fuck. Because it's a really good thing to say. It's a story he always told, because let's take it all the way back to the hunt in episode 3 of the show. He was always going on about dreams, not just to his kids, to her too. That is exactly what it's. You could tell she's like, he would do that. Like it is that. She doesn't need to know about the song. She doesn't need to know about the prophecy. She doesn't need to know any of that. All she needs is Rhaenyra's genuine reaction, her former best friend, and according to them and the creators and many fans, more than that at a time. She knows that it's true. But the choices are, like her son. She's not going to make the better choice.
Yeah, I feel like this has been a talking point for book readers since that episode, because I do feel like I was probably one of them, to be honest, where I did feel like, man, I really wish they didn't do that, because I do want Alicent to have a little bit more agency inside this war, where she is more complicit and she is more determined behind Aegon, behind the Team Green in general, where she feels like they're doing the right thing. Like this is the only way forward, regardless of what, Viserys wanted. This is what I believe is the way things should be. And her role in playing into the patriarchy is very key to me. So the fact that they chose to do the Aegon's vision thing was fascinating to me, but also the fact that they're able to clarify that moment in this scene, move past it, let Rhaenyra heal from it, which I thought was important as well. Quickly heal from it, because she immediately received the information and was like, really? And then she was like, oh, that's what you meant. And then have Alicent have the authority and the power to know this and still move on with her decisions, which is important for her role in the upcoming war.
Yes, I love that you touched on that for Rhaenyra. I love that, because when she says, like, did he mention me? No, he said Aegon. I was like, please don't let her think this for the rest of the war. Please.
Yeah.
Oh, it would be too painful if she thought this. Then we move on. They both now have the same truth. And it's like, what are you going to do with this truth? And to your point, that was hugely contentious, making it like a willful misinterpretation, but with enough wiggle room to still be innocent. Like, but many of us thought it wasn't. Now it's like, okay, even if, now you're choosing. And it's like my fascination with Alicent, that and the way I love that she's written, is that 99% of Alicent's choices are not Alicent. It's the patriarchy, it's her father directly, it's court, it's all of these things, and she's never had a say except 3 times. 1, how to be a mother, which comes up. She made bad choices there that were her choices. 2, what to do about her husband's dying words. She made that bad choice, and we saw what happened. And now 3, what to do about the new information, and she makes the bad choice again. And it's like, we can forgive you, as her daughter does, for everything that wasn't your choice, but the 3 huge ones that were you goofed. You goofed every time. And I guess you could argue the fostering of Kristen Cole, which is sort of a problem of the whole realm, but it's heartbreaking to see her walk away. Mercy is a theme of this episode. She does let Rhaenyra leave, great, but she's resigned herself to not being able to get out of it. She's sort of like the only way out is through at this point, which a lot of characters have that mentality, but for her it's extra devastating. And it kind of puts you in that spot as a fan, because I think a lot of us will be like going to Twitter like, she should have she knows the truth, she didn't do anything. But it's like, okay, let's say she calls the Green Council. How does she say this? And to who does she say it? Cole? I'm not gonna give a shit. Like, she is trapped now.
Yeah, I mean, they showed you that in the very first scene, right? The very first council meeting, they showed you what Alicent's role on this council is, and that is just being someone on the side and someone not ever listened to. So she personally knows that they already don't listen to me anyway. You really think they're going to listen to me if I literally say, hey, maybe Aegon shouldn't be king? Like, that's a no-no. I don't even get heard now. Why would they hear me with this new information?
Exactly. And it's like, especially after Blood and Cheese, like, any new information needed to be filed before Lucerys, and especially before that. And it alleviates, I think, Rhaenyra's soul, but it makes Alicent's soul even darker. Like, they both now are positioned a little bit differently, that they have the whole concept. And I thought it was really heartbreaking. Like, Alicent now without Otto, without any other back-end agents, alone in the place they used to share their feelings as girls, made this choice. And it fully gives her, like you said, agency, and it gives her tragedy, and the other Greens won't know. And like maybe Rhaenyra can go tell the Black Council and they'll believe, but it's like she's also going to tell the Black Council, and she heard me out. She understood exactly what I was saying, and we're still going to war. And
yeah. I also love how when she asked her like, "What's your plan here?" and she's like, "Well, they'll take me away and kill me, I guess, but I'll kill you." And then either way, and she's like, "What happens after that? Like after we're both dead?" And she's like,
exactly,
So,
like just destruction of the realm. Like,
yeah. So
everyone will burn.
I like that. It took me a second to get into the scene, if I'm being honest, because again, the whole, like you said, Star Wars thing, I was like, what is happening? We can't keep doing this, going undercover and being like, I'm going to just sneak in. It's whatever. That's really hard to do, especially inside this universe. But at the same time, I was like, I'll take it in. I'll believe it for the emotional journey that we're about to go on with this scene, which I did feel like it had, which was important because it was important for Rhaenyra also because she's been so hesitant to shed any blood or want to be shedding any blood and wanting to actually take an active part in the war, whatever that is for her. It doesn't have to be whatever her council tells her, but for her personally, what does she believe is an active role in winning a war? But also having her believe that, take that in and know that she really did try her best and did everything she could to avoid a future conflict.
Yeah, absolutely. As she says to her men, like, I've heard your arguments. I will take them into consideration. Now she's heard the only argument she needs, and in this show that was built on, 4 actors creating this relationship of them as young women and girls, and now moving into as moms. And they shared so many beautiful scenes in season 1. Season 2, I think, it's a challenge, I think, for these writers and directors to be like, when can they? I know there's rumors that like, they're gonna meet exactly this many times. I don't know if that's true or not, but like, this was needed. It's an 8-episode season, not a 10. So placing it here is like, okay, great. I have my 2 pillars, the 2 that this show is built on, the 2 that can light up a press tour, and everybody loves Emma Darcy and Olivia Cook, and they are incredible together. And so I think it was a powerful and sad scene, especially because Alicent, the only thing she holds on to is being God-fearing sometimes. And so like to do it there in the Sept of Baelor is like, well, truth and lies is an interesting thing to deal with, especially when like a really religious person is concerned, because it's about what your truth is a lot of the time. And she's saying, I swear on my mother, here at the place where I light candles for the fallen, I swear on my mother that he changed his mind. And it's like, okay, maybe you've made yourself believe this, and so it's your truth now. New information changes that. But I like what she says of like, do you think I'm capable of such naked deceit? And it's like, well, not all deceit is naked. That's the thing. Your deceit is wrapped up. Your deceit is wrapped up in trauma, just like how Coles is wrapped up in the white cloak and in his upbringing. Like, she's saying to Rhaenyra, like, you think I'm just a liar? And it's like, it's not that simple. And that's the thing, is that like, you can clutch your pearls and say that, but it really isn't that simple. And the show doesn't want to let anybody off that hook. And I think that that's really, really smart.
Yeah, I think it needed to be done because, again, Alicent is such an important character in this entire journey. So her ability to know a little bit more of what her actions entail and what her decisions can lead to, because this is another decision that she takes on when it comes to listening to Rhaenyra and when it comes to what to do with that information. So knowing that she's playing an active part now from this moment forward, you could have been on the side this whole time and you could have felt like, well, it doesn't matter now, but now it does matter because you are taking hold of this new information that could be, life shattering, and you're choosing to go forward with it and ignore it. So that is her taking back her agency, taking back her role on the greens and not just being someone on the side.
Yeah, well said. So, any last thoughts, little things, tiny things, aesthetics, music, anything like that that you want to point out?
Yeah, Moon Dancer, shout out to Moon Dancer.
Yes.
Anytime I see dragons, just dragons are my thing. That's my bread and butter. She's little. They're little, but you know, it can grow. Got
Yeah.
time.
The HBO growing speed is a lot faster. I
That's
feel
true.
like based on GOT, it's like I'll be big by the end of season.
And then Stormcloud and is it Tyraxis?
Tyraxis, yeah.
Tyraxis. And then a mention of Daemon and Tessarion,
Yeah.
who is a major role in the book.
They're both coming in. They'll be there in a few months, they say.
Yeah, I'm curious to see where they're gonna end the episodes. I think I know, but at the same time, I'm definitely because I feel like I predicted last season too with the Vagar situation. But
Right.
those stood out to me. I already mentioned Alice Rivers.
Yeah.
I think that's it. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's it.
I think I'm pretty much good too. But the only thing I wanted to point out is that obviously to say, Ramin Djawadi cooked is like, yeah, of course he did. He only has one mode and it's cooking on high heat. But one of my new favorite tracks is I have to see what it's actually called, but it's the Greens March when they're leaving. Oh, that was so good with Cole and Gwen. Like that music was really special, and I really liked it. And then of course I'm excited to go back for the Harrenhal score as well. It's one of those things where it's like GOT started in 2011. There's been so much, Jawadi music at this point where he's kind of like the George R. Martin, John Williams, where it's like his sound is so essential that now that there's another show being made, the Night of the Seven Kingdoms, I'm like, so is he gonna do that one too? Like I'm so afraid of not having his music, but I'm sure they'll make a good decision. So
anytime we get vocals too, we got vocals this episode. I forget what scene it was. It might have been the Rhaenyra and Alicent scene, but anytime we hear like an actual choir, it's just like incredible, absolutely incredible.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So thanks so much for coming on. Obviously, we'll have you
Yeah.
on. I want to have you on whenever you want. I'm gonna keep getting the links to our friends and collaborators and Casterly Talk legends, but especially we're gonna be on Sea Smoke Watch. So tell everybody where they can find you. I know you're posting over on First Cut about Hot D, and so you tell everybody what's going on there and then where they can find the shows.
Yeah, First Cut TMO on TikTok is usually where I post my first videos, and then obviously I'll post it over on Instagram as well. First Cut TMO, First Cut on YouTube, and you can find me personally at Squad Leader Ace, and I'll probably be tweeting more about the show as well.
Yes, absolutely. And then, as always, links down below. Check out all of Ace's stuff there. Just the great team with RB3 and Sabrina and everybody. And then, Geeks of Color and the larger organization doing such good work. And also, if you're a fan of Star Wars or an anime fan and everything, like Andres has you covered. One of the best follows, always fighting the good fight, even in times when it feels like, why are we still on this app? You can always depend for Andres for a good take. And then me personally at that Alden Diaz, THATALDNDIAZ, Octo Radio, here with Ken, anytime with Ken and Alden on Fridays. Again, congrats to Ken on Hot Burbank Nights, his first comedy show over at Flappers that he's putting together with his name and everybody. We're going to keep going doing this with guests. It's like we get comments every time, like, is Ken going to be on? It's not impossible. It's not impossible. It just depends on how he feels any given Sunday night. He can walk in whenever he wants. It's his StreamYard. So it's like it can always happen. It's like the Marvel Cinematic Universe. You never know what could happen. We could get a Ken Knapsack, like a post-credit scene or something. But yeah, thank you everybody for watching. Casterly Talk on all the socials, spelled exactly the way you'd expect. I'm so glad we got that handle as early as we did. And we're going to continue going as we have now 5 more episodes this season. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. And we will catch you next time. Goodbye.